This is Phantom Electric Ghost, and we are live on my Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch channels with YVSALOME. And we've had her on the podcast before, but this is the first time we've had her on the new video podcast format. And we're glad to have her on the air again. And we've been a podcaster for about 3 years, and now we're doing these live podcasts. Before they were never live, so we're happy to have everybody on board. So are you happy to be on the program today?
Yeah, hi there. Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
So what's one cool thing, the difference between the old podcast and a new podcast is we're able to actually play music from the artist that we're talking to. And so we're actually going to play a BandCamp single. We're going to cue it up right now. And so we're going to play her latest, one of her latest tracks from her fourth album, right? You've got an album coming at the end of the year?
Yeah. I assume it will come out in the end of the year, but just maybe in the end of summer. So we're not pretty much aware of that.
Okay, so this is the song Kill You off of her BandCamp. We're going to get into it. We're going to mute your mic and then we'll come back and talk after we play the video. So we're going to start it now.
I don't want to stay here, I want to die. Spitting blood in your face, I feel so alive. Step into darkness, you will find me there. I'm dying of pain, but you don't really care. Is it I wanna kill you, or I want to die? I can stand everything, except your goodbye. If you will leave me, I have nothing to do. Is it I want to die, or I wanna kill you? I wanna kill you, I wanna kill. Right here in front of your past. It hurts me much more than I can say. I faced everything that I tried to escape. Is it I wanna kill you, or I want to die? I can stand everything, except your goodbye. If you will leave me, I have nothing to do. Is it I want to die, or I wanna kill you? I wanna kill you, I wanna kill you. You're only one who makes me alive. You make me believe that I can survive. If you don't love me, just let me go. I wanna die fast, I don't wanna die slow. Is it I wanna kill you, or I want to die? I can stand everything, except your goodbye. If you will leave me, I have nothing to do. Is it I want to die, or I wanna kill you?
is the track "Kill You" from your forthcoming album, and
Yeah.
we're back on the air. So yeah, that's a pretty. I like the new wave feel. I like the synths. You know, you can see from behind me, I'm a synth guy, but yeah, I like that. I'm always into that kind of sound. It's kind of like a new romantic sound to me. It sounds kind of late, 80s, early 90s. I like that. That's kind of where I live, musically anyway. So yeah, it's a pretty cool track, and it's giving you like, is that the feel of the whole record, or would the whole record be very diverse in the way it sounds? Is that just a sample of what it would sound like?
Yeah, I would say that it will be more like Berlin vibes dash Amsterdam vibes, way more positive and way more light, I would say, than this song. I guess it will be the darkest one, the most gloomy from the whole album. So we're going to have like around 8 new tracks, and yeah, we're gonna show the full diversity.
So this is your first full album, because like when we talked before, you had like singles, but
Yeah.
now you're actually putting together a full album. So
Yeah.
one of the things we talked about before is like, this is the kind of the age of the playlist, and a lot of bands have to put out singles all the time to keep their fans like active. But I'm a child of the '70s, so I like albums. So I like
Me too.
extended plays. So how do you kind of manage the way the audience listens to music with like a lot of artists want to actually present more than one song? How do you kind of work that?
I'm not that much concentrated on like bringing it to the audience, because I've tried the different instruments on how to do it, and I had several disappointments, I should say. So I'm like way more concentrated on what am I doing on my music, on my lyrics, on my personal moment within the course, and I feel more like I'm a musician, not a promoter. But of course, I do know that we should do it as well. So I'm going to launch the album and a few videos, maybe one video, like a clip, but I'm not sure about the rest of it. I will be launching some promos, some like Instagram events, maybe some Instagram activities, but not much. I'm not a promoter.
Yeah. I mean, that's the same kind of situation. A lot of us are, musicians first, and like I kind of take it as like, I'm going to do what I want to do, whether or not the audience is going to come with me. I'll find a new audience, right? Like if my old audience wanted me to do what I was doing 5 years ago, and I'm not going to keep on doing what I was doing 5 years ago. Now they might like what I did 5 years ago better than anything else in my catalog, but I'm not going to keep on doing that because it's boring to me.
Absolutely.
So I'm hoping to find like new people that will be where I am. And if the old people don't want to come with me, okay, that's fine. You don't have to come with me. But I think it's just like interesting, like how you have to manage it, because sometimes to get success, you might end up with a song that you don't even want to play anymore.
Sometimes it happens.
Yeah, your greatest song, and then you're like, I have all this other material, and no one wants to hear anything but this one thing.
Yeah.
I think that's very frustrating if that happens to anybody, and I've seen stories about that. But one of the things that I think we're going to probably go and talk about, just because this is a new format. So I wanted to get into kind of like the story we had before, but now we have people who are going to see it as a video. So for the folks of you that hadn't seen the previous episode, how did you get into music? At what age?
I assume it was around 12. Yeah, I started singing at that time, and I started writing lyrics, which is the core of my music for me. And yeah, it was around 12, and I guess when I was maybe like 14, my mom took me to the coach who taught me how to sing a bit better. And then I moved to opera singing, which eventually I realized I hate. Not like really hate, but I don't really like it. So I don't perform in that way. And then I decided to move into what I am now. So it's more like pop music, maybe some gloomy dark pop music, but still it's a pop music, and I would like to stay with it. So yeah, it's not that long time ago, but still pretty long time ago.
Yes, I mean, so when you got into, you were formerly like a classical vocalist, and you like baroque or baroque music.
Baroque, yeah.
Yeah, and so like as a kid, you liked pop music, but you felt like when you were getting trained that you were focused on the classical, and then you realized you didn't like classical.
Yeah, as a kid, I was really very much into Gothic music, like Gothic rock, like old school Gothic rock, and I was a fan of Lacrimosa for many years. And then I realized I really want to change, and it was like my maybe high school somewhere. I realized I do like Tokyo Hotel music, and I do like pop music, and I do like mixing those genres. I would like to create something like that.
Well, I think what's really interesting today is the mix of genres that people cross over. You know, you see it in hip hop. You know, they use a lot of jazz. There's a lot of jazz in hip hop. There's a lot of funk that, you know, hip hop just takes tons of stuff from James Brown and Parliament Funkadelic. But even in pop music, people kind of go in different directions. I like new romantic music that like bands like Joy Division, New Order, Depeche Mode. You know, that's kind of like why I got into synthesizers when I first saw, like, you know, Joy Division, you know, Love Will Tear Us Apart, and I just heard that synth line. I'm like, wow, that I like that style. And then I heard The Cure, and then I heard all these bands, and that whole kind of like a little bit of darkness in the new wave, and some of the new wave is a little bit of that darkness, and then some of it's a little more poppy, like you get to like a Duran Duran, or a Flock of Seagulls. But I kind of lean toward like the dark pop, which I can hear in your stuff, because you even your write up.
Those are my roots, yeah.
Yeah, like Edgar Allan Poe and Oscar Wilde. So I can feel the kind of like the kind of dark pop. And it's cool because, you know, it's like when people get into film noir. You know, why do you like film noir? Because it's kind of got that dark beat thing, and it's like there's an edge to it. Because if you're happy all the time, I mean, that's nice, but sometimes it's not as interesting as a story that has a little more depth. You know, because being happy, okay, why are you happy? Well, I'm happy, but
and that's kind of strange to be happy all the time.
Yeah, it seems kind of odd because it's not the way the world is. So it's like, I think everybody has emotional issues, and, you know, sometimes, and I think they kind of seek out the music that makes them feel a certain way. And, you know, some people, I guess, maybe they want to be happy all the time, but I totally get where you are. And one of the things I was wondering, so when you focused on your voice, did you learn other instruments too? Did you like learn piano or guitar? Or are you
of course, yeah.
So your favorite writing instrument? What do you write?
I've started with guitar, and then I also tried to learn piano, but still I'm not that much into instruments as I am into vocals and lyrics. And firstly, now I compose with piano, and then maybe I will join some guitar and I will just add it to what I'm doing now. But I'm not sure, because I had enough of guitars, honestly. Then I had my first band, and we were composing like classical Gothic rock, this classic approach with guitars and gumi keyboards and so on and so on. I had enough of guitars, and I do like the way it sounds, but I prefer electronics and piano.
That's interesting. So do you use like a digital audio workstation, like a DAW? To use a MIDI keyboard?
It's DAW only. And some keyboards.
Yeah, the other thing I know that, I mean, a lot of people who aren't musicians, they use like, you know, pad-based, like launch pads, or like they use like, you know, Akai, you know, MPCs, or like you know, Roland 707s. Just because if you're not somebody that knows piano and you get a grid-based controller, you can actually break rules. And if you're not a musician, sometimes it's really cool. If you're not somebody that's classically trained on piano, but you get something like a launch pad, you can actually cross over things that you can't do on the piano. So then you could end up composing something very unique, and actually, as a producer, have a really, you know, individual style, because there's certain things you can't physically do on the keyboard. You know, you could do like in the DAW. But I think that's how, like, if you think about hip hop, a lot of people weren't musicians in hip hop. They had nowhere to have a musician, you know, to have all the gear when you live in an urban area. So they, using things like MPCs and 707s and all kinds of alternative MIDI controllers allows people to be expressive without having gone to a training of a classical school or something. I think that gives people to come at it a different way, because sometimes like when you learn the rules, you get confined. And if you don't, like, if you get so rigid in the rules of certain types of genres, you're not willing to explore crossing genres.
Yeah,
So
that can somehow limit you.
Yeah, do you like to I mean, you talked about crossing genres already, but that's something that when you're writing, you don't want to get just stuck in one zone, right? Musically, you want to explore.
Yeah, and I guess it would be my next step, because as I told you, I'm really into Berlin vibes now and Amsterdam vibes, and they do like this electronics. Like some people, I don't really know their names and don't remember at this point, but I do like what they're doing. It's like they call it like not heavy electronics, but something like that, and they play like really heavy club music. And I do like it, and I would like to go into that, maybe just as a side project, not as a YVSALOME project, but still, I do like this approach.
Yeah, the one thing I appreciate that like Berlin has always been an inspiration to me, because I go back to like craft work and go back to like the work that Brian Eno did with David Bowie back in the 70s, and it was all focused in Berlin. Because even today, the modular Eurorack synthesis crowd of musicians is very active in places like Berlin. And so like I'm a big analog fan. I use a lot of analog
I know, yeah.
synthesizers, because I like the experimentation you can do with them. You can create all kinds of alternative rhythms and stuff with all kinds of techniques that synthesizers can do. And so, but then I know there are people using samples and granular samples and all different types of synthesis, modern synthesizers, different techniques like Buchla versus using like additive synthesis versus subtractive synthesis. There's all these things that you can get real heavy into, but it's experimental, and it's kind of the nature of electronic music. People sometimes forget, these modular synths like were the beginning of electronic music in the late 50s, because Robert Moog built them, and he had like a lot of experimentation in New York with people who didn't use keyboards. They used like just these big modular synths to experiment, and which seems like we got full circle to what people were doing in New York City in like 1955. People are doing again in places like Berlin.
Yeah, and I can really hear that. And I recently discovered IMAX music for me, and I do like what they are doing and what they're experimenting with, and the sound they work with. It's really inspiring.
So your new album have you finished recording it, or are you still like
not yet? We're still in progress. Yeah.
But you have,
I guess
we'll
we'll finish
the
it
tracks kind of mapped out what you're going to have on it. You're not going to add tracks, or you just working
No,
on tracks.
I do know that's what we have, and we're going to finish recording, and no more. There will be no more tracks, but those 8, and I already have the first track for the second album. It is called "In the Streets of Berlin," by the way.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. Do you find sometimes when that's an interesting thing I want to point out, that sometimes when you're an artist, you're working on a project, right? And then you have a song that doesn't fit that project. It kind of fits like your next thing, right? Because in the middle of doing something, you might experiment, and then it doesn't really fit with the current vibe of all the other things that you're working on. So then you're like, well, I really like this, but I guess I got to move it to the next project because it's not going to really fit. Is that what happened? Like you were doing what you were doing for the current album's going to come out, and then you got into like that Berlin sound, and you said, well, this really sounds more like my next thing. Yeah,
absolutely. And we'll be having quite different mood, different vibes, and I guess maybe I will have some new languages added and some new sound approach.
That's interesting. I think it's really the process that musicians go through is one of the questions I always ask is like, do you feel that you plan what you're going to do out, or do you go for more like, okay, something just comes to me and I didn't really want to think about it. It just kind of like the thing that comes in the moment, or the happy accident. Do you find that those things work better than the things that you spend a lot of time on, and then it's like you keep on working on it, and it's like not as satisfying as something that comes like kind of out of the blue.
Yeah, just go with the flow, just this Mozart way. In my perception, like Mozart, he has always been at the present moment, right here, right now, and this is why he's so valuable. His music is so valuable because it's like it's alive and it's about this current moment. So I do the same, like go with the flow.
Yeah, that's why one of the reasons I don't use like a DAW is because my analog synthesizers kind of talk to me. As soon as I turn one of my Moogs on, like I might unplug all the wires, right? And I have all these wires, and then start over with how I'm going to create the sound. So a lot of what you do with the analog is like you spend like 2 hours on the sound design, and maybe you spend like 10 minutes on actually using the sound design, but you spend so much time building up what the sound's going to be that kind of creates the focus of like, okay, now I created this new weird modulation, and I can actually use that rhythmically, or I can use that to inspire lyrics, and now kind of like I'll just do stream of consciousness, and I'll just record it, all the stream of consciousness, and then I'll go back and it's like, well, where's the hook? And then I might move things around, but I kind of just like raw tape, and then grab everything and then see what goes together. And I find that kind of process, at least for me, that I get more out of that than if I try to plan something. And sometimes I have a plan because I'm trying to do like a rock opera and I've got something all planned out. But then people will say, well, that's a little convoluted. So it's like, okay, the stuff that's more freeform tends to work better.
Yeah, so I don't do experiment in that way, but still I do have some fixed forms of songs because I am more aimed at pop music, and we do have some laws of genre, and I'm not like trying to follow it, but I'm trying to explore up to what point I would like to follow it and where I would like to break some rules. Yeah, maybe the next song of mine, which we're going to record, it's called Following You. It's pretty much like a vampire story, but put into pop music and very light pop music, and I do like this one. I have many vampire stories.
That's interesting because I think it's interesting when a band takes something like a dark, like a horror kind of story, like a vampire story, right? But then the song is kind of upbeat, but the lyrics might have a little darkness, and I think that's kind of cool when you have that kind of dichotomy, because some people don't really listen to the lyrics. They just listen to the beat, right? So then you got a crowd that will love your song, but they don't even know what it's really about because they kind of like the musical hook. They like the beat, and if you ask them what does it mean, they're like, well, I don't know. But it's kind of like I like the way it sounds. But I'm a kind of a music fan that I got to put the headphones on, and I'm like, oh, I'm trying to interpret like exactly what you're trying to say, or trying to figure out where you're going with it. And then it's really cool when you have something that lyrically doesn't coincide with the music. It's sometimes it's like a total like opposite of what you would expect. And I think that to me, it's always been like really, I love to get drawn into stuff like that because I think that makes it more interesting as a fan of music.
I agree.
When people do that kind of depth, when you actually have to figure out, oh, what are they trying to say? Did they mean this? Did they mean that? And then, it's like reading a book. You're trying to figure. That's why I like singer-songwriters, because when you write your own song, then I'm kind of getting a window into who you are or what you like. Yeah. If you're just singing somebody else's song, it's like, okay, you're a good singer, but you didn't write that. And maybe you can convey the emotion. But I think that's why a lot of fans like singer-songwriters, because they feel like, well, this is what this person really believes. This is what this person is kind of into, and maybe it's not, because maybe you're good at kind of projecting, but I think it's like you're reading like a sound painting, when you
totally
deal with the singer-songwriter. Is that what you like about it? That you're able to express yourself
Absolutely.
Like exactly the way you want?
Yeah, that's very important for me. So I may follow this exact person and find out eventually whom am I listening to? What do you want to tell me? What are you about? That's very important for me. It has always been. Music is not that important for me because I feel music, I feel vocals, I feel lyrics, and only after that I listen to all this. This is why I don't think that pop music is really that something like light, because pop music can be a hard one to listen to. Like, I'm idolizing Hertz, as many people know, because they have such a light, entertaining music, but the meaning is so deep at the same time. And I really appreciate that, because that's what I'm going to do. I'm trying to do my best to do eventually.
Yeah, because that kind of reminds me of if you think about like this jumping into a totally different genre, but if you think about like, the Carpenters, right? They seem to be talking about all this happy romance, right, in the 70s. But Karen Carpenter's voice has so much melancholy that even when she's singing about something that's supposed to be happy, there's like a level of sadness in it. And that, to me, made their work very, very good, because there was a depth to it, because the singer had so much depth in her voice. And I think that is when you bring something like that kind of dichotomy of like being a singer-songwriter, and you can convey that kind of emotion through the lyrics or the delivery of what you're doing. I think that's what makes it really interesting. And sometimes I probably don't listen to like the top 20 as much as like the bottom 100. I'm looking for the people who are doing different things. I'm looking for the people who are more in the indie frame. That's why, on this show, I talk to people who are independent artists, because to me, I could go listen to all the top 10 people and it's like, okay, I hear all the perfection at that level. But so to me, what I think is interesting is like music is great because of the happy accidents. Its music is great because of the independent people who come up with new ideas, and eventually it kind of goes to the top. But I think that's where like everything that's interesting to me happens.
Yeah, that's what IMAX and Chris Corner actually emphasized recently, that when you are trying to work with major labels, they want you to create songs pretty much the same one by one, and they want every song to become the next number one. What you want to do, and eventually being independent could be the only way for many of us, just because that helps us and gives us an opportunity to do what we eventually want to do, like Jim Jarmusch, for example. It's a great example of a director, and I'm sure you watched On the Lover's Left Alive. It's one of my very favorite movies ever, just because no action at all, no one knows what's going on there, but it's one of the best movies about the depths of life, I don't know, the divine love and so on that I have ever seen.
Yeah, I'm always into like independent film myself. I mean, I'm looking for people who are doing something unique. And I think like the problem I think in overall entertainment is like once you have a formula that works, all the machine of the industry, whether you're in film or music or TV, wants to just clone. Like like when the Beatles were around, they tried to clone the Beatles. You get the Monkees,
oh yeah,
you get the Turtles, you get all these groups trying to be the Beatles, right? And some of them were a little bit different. And so they end up being okay. You could listen to the Monkees, and they're not exactly the Beatles. You could listen to the Turtles. You could listen to all these other bands. But the problem is, like today, you get people. They get Beyonce, and then you'll have like 100 Beyoncés, 100 variations of Beyonce.
Absolutely, yeah.
Or like 100 variations of U2. And as well, U2 is so vague. Like, how many do I really want to hear 100 different bands that sound like U2? Maybe not. So that's. And they kind of killed the genre. It's kind of like what disco happened. Like disco was great, but so many bands got into this formula that eventually it came like too much, and people just like, oh, I don't want it anymore. And I think sometimes like that can happen if you think about like an EDM genre. If everybody does the drop the same way, then eventually everybody's gonna get bored of having that drop in the same way. And then the record companies, oh, we got to keep on doing that drop, and then eventually people are like, well, I don't want it. And then so that's the danger in the cloning, is that you think it's a recipe for success, but eventually it's a recipe for failure.
Yeah.
So I think it's always be good to be your own person, and not let I think every artist can find an audience. And the agents and the managers might say, oh no, you have to be like this. But I think if you are true to what you believe in, people will come to you.
Yeah, people who resonate with you. That's the
It will
main
resonate.
thing.
You'll become authentic. If you think about like new wave and kind of punk music, people liked it because it was authentic, because it was different than what happened before. And so, now we're kind of in an age where I don't know if anybody's doing, there's some people doing really new things, but there's a lot of people that are cloning older things. And maybe it seems new because they go really far back. Like some people might go to like baroque music, or they might go and do something like 1920s flapper music. And nobody's really doing that. So it's not that it wasn't done before. You go and find a period of time and you do something that nobody's doing, So you bring like a scat, or you bring a type of like a bebop. You go back to jazz. You bring somebody does a bebop pop song with a bebop jazz beat. It seems really refreshing because no one else is really doing that. So I think that's like it's being like innovative and creative with crossing genres and mixing things. Like taking hip hop and country music and crossing it, and then you get something new.
That's actually what I'm gonna do with one of my songs on the upcoming album. It will be called Maleficent, if I do remember it correctly. I haven't changed anything. Yeah, I'm gonna mix my approach with vocals, with like classics, baroque, and the pop singing. I don't know if it will be accepted by the audience or not, but I'm gonna do something like Eliminated by Hertz, if we can associate it with that. But yeah, I would like to mix those two together to get this like a real drama.
Yeah, I think that's what's always fascinated me, because people would, they'll say, well, you have to do what's like in fashion. But if you think of somebody like Bowie could have done Ziggy Stardust like his whole career. That's what he could have done. And there were people that wanted him to do that his whole career, but he's like, no, he just stopped it. And at the height of Ziggy, he could have kept on going for years, and he just like, no, it's done, right? And then he goes into like the Thin White Duke mode, and then he started working with Luther Vandross, and totally, that is very rare today. I don't know if a pop star today could do what Bowie did, like going from a rock band like Ziggy to actually singing with Luther Vandross and doing like Blue Eyed Soul, like totally different. Like the Young Americans, that's a totally different genre. And today, a lot of companies would look at you at the pop star and say, "No, you can't do that." It's like you got to stay as Ziggy because that's what we're going to promote. And that's why I think people want to go indie, because I think in the past there was some freedom that you could do something like what Bowie did, and you could like reinvent yourself with every album, and not worry if you're going to drop people off. And he did lose people. He lost people every time. Sometimes his projects didn't kick over. Ziggy was probably one of the biggest things until he came up with Let's Dance, and then he got this whole. He actually became, instead of being this like totally like I don't know, avant-garde, he became more pop with Let's Dance, but it was still Bowie pop. So it wasn't exactly like normal pop music. He was still doing very innovative things in it, but it was more acceptable. It was more accepted by a pop audience, because he did some things with the beats. He did some things that was kind of matching the time period, where normally he probably didn't care about matching the time period, but he did. In that case, he actually tried to match what was going on. So I think it's interesting, if you get that kind of the feel of what you're going to do. Like if you go back and pick a classical form or a jazz form, or even like an Americana folk music, and then mix it with like hip hop. Like what you're doing. If you can cross over as much as you can into different things, I think it's always better as an artist, though your manager might not think it's good.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm really afraid about when it comes to major labels and sending demos to them. It's they want you to be pretty much strict to their program, to what they want from you, and I'm not sure I want that. I'm ready for that, because for example, I've started as like a classic vampire with all these fangs and blood over my face and so on and so on. Despite I was pretty sophisticated, it was one pretty strict genre, and the audience got used to that eventually. And then I changed like completely. I said, no, that's not me anymore. I don't want that. I lost a big part of the audience, but I'm okay with that because I know that they are free to choose, and I am free to choose as well. And I can change, and I can be more Berlin, less Gothic, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, so that's where your head's at. That's, you know, I think Prince used to run into that where everybody wanted him to do like the 1999 or Purple Rain period and just do that, right? And he never did that. He would reinvent himself, come up with a new vision for his own stagecraft, kind of like Bowie. And you know, he would lose. Like Purple Rain's like 8 to 10 million people bought that, and then he goes and does like Around the World in a Day, and it dropped down to 2 million. So from like 8 million down to 2 million, he lost like 6 million fans because he went and did something psychedelic, and he didn't care. He didn't care. It's like, well, you know, I'm going to do what I want. And I think that takes a lot of guts, you know. And I think like when you're in a label, sometimes you can't do that because they'll send you producers, and all these producers will come in the room. I was watching a story about a younger artist, and won't mention her name, but they signed to a major label. They were indie. They went to the label recording studio, and they were in this meeting, and they had like 6 different producers that were in the meeting, all like pitching different styles. And it was like the artist was like very overwhelmed because they didn't want to be just like running through 6 different variations, like being forced to like do that in like a very short amount of time. And it felt like they were trying to like force them into a niche, and it wasn't even what he normally did. And then I'm wondering, like, okay, well, that's not cool.
Yeah, if you're not ready for that, it's really complicated thing.
Yeah, I think that they're like, okay, they want to mold me into what they think I am, and then you have to like, do you want to have a hit so much that it's kind of like classic blues story. You get to the fork, the fork in the road, and you go with the devil or you don't go with the devil. You know, it's like, do you sell your soul?
It actually happened to me when I was trying to get into conservatory.
Yeah, do you feel like that kind of happened to you?
Nope, because they told me that they don't want me the way I am, and I don't want to be a vanilla singer. So, no. That's
so
not gonna happen to me.
You were at the crossroads, and you made the decision that like, I'm not going to do what people expect me to do. And that can be hard because you could have your family, your friends, everybody.
Oh, I'm used to that.
Like, yeah, they could say like, "Oh, you're an opera singer, you're a classical singer. That's what you should do." And then you suddenly say, "Well, I don't want to do that," you know. And then everybody kind of hits that, like, you have peer pressure or social pressure from people around you, and there could be people that love you, and they tell you the wrong thing. And I think people have to kind of know. Even if you have people around you that love you, but you're in your gut when you're a creative, right? In your gut, you know what you want. And people can tell you something else, but like, you gotta stay true to your heart, your real true heart of what you want.
Yeah, we were recently discussing it while we were recording. So we recorded vocals, and we were discussing why it sounds this way. I said, like, I don't want to be a perfect singer or even a good singer. I want to sound like this, and it will be like this.
Yeah, I mean, you have to make those style choices when you're an artist, you know, because like people will want you to do certain things. Like, you know, with my voice is kind of deep.
Yeah, it's like, beautiful voice.
But I ended up wanting to make my voice a female voice and use that as the primary sound in most of my songs. And people would tell me like, you really should use your other voice because like that's gonna what. But you know, I've been able to do it because it's kind of what I wanted. And I do songs with this deeper voice, but I do like to kind of experiment with my voice with vocal synthesizers. So I use a lot of different vocal synthesizers to make, you know, variations. And kind of like, maybe I'm shooting myself in my foot or whatever, but that's what I wanted to do, and that's what I did. So. You know, I understand that people can tell you one thing and then you go the other way, and you could like, okay, well, I don't know, you know, if that's the best way, but that's the best way for me right now, you know.
Yeah.
So I get that. I think that's really the heart of why people want to be indie is really freedom. I think the freedom to be expressive. And if you're a creative person, right, why are you doing it? Because you're doing it because you want to express yourself, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So this album, you're saying, you kind of hinted it might come out in the summer or it might be more toward the end of the year, and you are working on videos to go with some of these songs?
Yeah, right. So I'm finishing recordings, and then I'm sending everything to my indie label, and they launch the album. And while maybe we will launch some singles before the album, so just to warm up everyone, and maybe I'll have some money to have a good video for that album. I do hope for that. But I'm not sure. Maybe the video will come up just with the second album, because I feel like more fashion-electronic music for the second album, and I really see the video for the second album. But lyrics videos, they will of course go with the first one.
So the one thing that's interesting, like when you do you had the vampire kind of motif before, is the kind of stagecraft, because I think it's important when you're an artist to have like a sense of stagecraft. Like if you think about like a Lady Gaga and Bowie and Prince and Freddie Mercury. Yeah,
vampires it's my thing.
It's kind of like what the stagecraft gives you, this kind of vision that you can have this other you. Right, that when you're out there, I think this happens even if you're a singer and you just wear your blue jeans and a shirt, right? That's what I'm wearing now. Yeah, but how you come on stage, right? When you perform, it's almost like that person performing isn't exactly like the person you talk to, right? Because I think every creative person, when they get on stage, they get in this zone where that is the creative kind of form of yourself. It's like the mask. Everybody wears a mask. And I think like entertainers, like in order to go up on stage and to be that, you become like that version of yourself.
Yeah, and I have some special, of course, outfit for those purposes. I have a designer clothing, like one of a kind, each piece, and it's really beautiful. Sometimes I do buy things from Killstar or so on, but it's just like maybe some boots or something, tracked, so on. But mostly I prefer custom things. I prefer custom clothing, and it's how I actually started my golf path. I've always had everything custom, and it was really beautiful, and it fit me perfectly. And now I still do such things, and I really want to stay somewhere near the fashion, and I want to get it into my music. Yeah,
because I think that's important, because they think the people who have like theater or modeling training or acting training, when they become a musician, they bring that to the stage. And I think if you can do like acting, I think every musician does act even if they don't realize it.
Of course.
But if you were actually trained, or if you're trained as a model, you know how to present yourself, right? So you can present yourself to the audience in the kind of vision you want them to get from the vibe that you're trying.
The impression
that you're trying to give. And I think it's really important, because if you think about it, like in the past, you get a band like the Grateful Dead, they're just like, okay, we're just a bunch of hippies in a collective and we'll just do whatever we want, and that's their vibe, and they weren't trying to be anything else. But then you get other people that present, like like a Robert Plant or a Roger Daltrey from The Who. They present this kind of lead singer without the shirt on in the 70s. They had this kind of thing where they're kind of like this kind of Jesus image,
I like Christian Death in that sense.
They're kind of pushing this thing, and it was different than what other people did. It was like theater, and I think it is very important to have a stage presence to differentiate yourself from other artists, so that people can say, well, look what she's doing, look what he's doing. That your audience can kind of dive into it, and they get drawn into it, and then they're more likely to listen to more of your music, right? Because you've got this whole image that they get drawn into, then they want to know about it, they want to know where you're coming from. Then they're not just going to listen to one song on a Spotify playlist. They're going to try to look at like all your stuff.
Yeah, including photography. I'm very much into changing the style of my modeling, and I'm working with different photographers now, even like film photographers who are working with the film, and I do like it. I do like the quality. It's very different to work with the photographers and with the people who are more into digital. Like they make a picture and then they draw over this, like in a Photoshop or something like that. And it's not a photo. It's more like a drawing. And I don't really like that.
Art.
Yeah, I prefer this sense of reality around you, real things. And I have a list of photographers all over Germany. It's like they are well-known photographers, so I need to work a bit to gain that. But still, I am really inspired by them because I can see that they feel what's going on behind your back, what's going on around you, and they really can see you as a living, breathing person, and they can still bring out the best of you. That's really valuable.
That's interesting because you talk about how photographers can bring out like a model in the best light, right? It's sometimes like, recording engineers and producers can bring out something that as an artist that you didn't really think of. So when you're working, how much work do you do with like recording engineers or producers to kind of like maybe challenge your original music, or do you primarily do everything?
I'm making like the basics of music, and then I'm bringing it to the studio and I'm telling them, this is what I have. What can we do with that? How can we make it sound better? And I don't think that at this moment I'm like a perfect singer. No, I'm just the beginner, but I want to sound as well as I can, as good as I can. And how can we do this? And sometimes I do realize that some producers, they understand me better than I do. And they tell me like, relax, do this way, just breathe and you'll be fine. And it really works out because sometimes I don't know that, for example, this genre can underline something I have more than I think it could, or more than other genre. And sometimes they can mix sounds I'm not aware about because I'm not listening to certain kinds of music. And that's really cool that then they can make their input.
Well, I think it's interesting about recording engineers and producers is right, coming from like the music theory side, they can hear what you're doing, right? And when you have a really good producer, they accentuate what you did, right? They don't try to rewrite what you did. They try to emphasize what you did, right? So they can go and say, well, let's do this shadow vocal, like under your vocal, and give it a little more weight, right? Or they go and they add a little color with a different instrument on a different track, and it might be really low, or it might be even like a sound effect. It's because they kind of understand sound, right?
Yeah.
So, and if you've got a guy or woman that understands how to take your sound and then actually dress it up, right? Not try to change it, but dress it up to make it have the color, the feel, kind of like the photographer. Like if you get a really good producer that's in sync with where you are, right? They listen to where you are and they don't destroy what you did. They make it better. And that's where I kind of I like the people that don't try to remake somebody, but they take them and they actually make them better, but not really changing what they do, but just adding so much to it that it's like, wow, the depth of there. You could listen to the demo and then you listen to what the producer did and they actually just made it so much better, but they didn't like radically shift it. And that's
but it's still you.
It's still you. I think that's what sometimes if you're a younger artist, you might not have the strength to tell the producer not to radically change you. You might not have the confidence to say that I know what I want. And so like if you get a younger artist that doesn't know what they want, and you could even have an older artist that's kind of like insecure. Like you could be in your 30s or 40s, you could be insecure about what you're doing, and you could let somebody kind of manipulate you to a certain extent. It's kind of like it doesn't really matter about the age. It could be that it's kind of like what's in you. If you don't feel good about it, if you're kind of second guessing yourself, then you're going to be more likely to get pushed in different directions.
Yeah, but sometimes it really gets better because, for example, I like piano music, and sometimes I'm pretty conservative when it comes to piano ballads, and I want just piano, nothing more. But I was recently told that it would be nice if we will have piano plus something else, like not maybe violin, maybe cello or something like that. And yeah, some minor electronics, some cello, and it will be better. And it's really better because it helps you to put accents, to build dynamics, and it's really better. So I'm lucky.
Yeah, I think that's the cool thing when you get a producer that like comes in and they don't like overdo it, but they kind of accentuate it to the point where like, okay, I'm gonna add some strings, but I'm not gonna make it like real heavy like a Motown string. You know, I'm gonna go and do it like a little lighter touch. And so it's like it's just an interesting way you can do with atmospherics and all kinds of tools you have to kind of change the mode. Like one of my favorite producers, like Brian Eno. You know, if you listen to what he did with U2 on Unforgettable Fire, right? And like U2 didn't sound like that. They had this. When he did Unforgettable Fire, they just totally got this new sound, and it's kind of like what Eno does, but it didn't really. He didn't really radically change what U2, their vibe. He just added this different sensibility to it. Yeah. And for that one album, it sounded that way, and then they don't really sound like that again. But it's like, it's interesting how you can do that. You can have somebody come in. I mean, even Dylan had Brian Eno come in and do an album in the '90s, and it doesn't sound like any other Dylan album. It sounds totally different than anything he ever did, and that's kind of cool sometimes when you have somebody that can add something that you didn't expect, even as an artist that you didn't even know you're going to go there. That's kind of cool sometimes, but it depends on where your head's at if you really want to go there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But I'm excited that you're working on a new album. So has it been hard because of COVID to actually get the album done?
Well, yeah. It's been a bit tough sometimes, been pretty tough due to personal reasons, but I survived. I'm okay. I'm here and I'm moving on. So yeah, it's not as fast as I hoped it could be, but it's okay.
Yeah, everybody has to kind of go slower, in everything that's going on, because like the one thing that's interesting is like, okay, most musicians, we make the lion's share of any kind of money we make by doing shows. And COVID totally like cut off our ability to do shows. So a lot of bands have switched to video. They switched to like, collaborating with other bands, doing features.
Very popular.
Doing stuff like that, or even trying to do live streams and monetize them. But so what have you got any plans to play live at all for 2021, or is that more like a 2022 thing?
Yeah, it's 2022 because I would like to have more songs on the list, and I would like to be more confident within what am I doing, if I am a bit more dark, or do I feel like more electronics. So I would like to just to feel how it works, because I'm not sure yet, but I guess 2022 will come up with some live shows for sure. Maybe some small tour.
We're actually taking the festival that we're doing online. We're hoping to partner with a New York indie label and actually do it physically in New York in 2022. So they actually have, and the whole point of what we're trying to do is this year we're doing an online festival with only guests who have been on the show. So every person that's going to be at our show has been interviewed on our show. And our pitch is that because we interview artists all the time, that we could potentially have these type of events happen like maybe twice a year. We're gonna have this first one, but by the end of the year, I'll have more guests that no one's seen, so we could actually do another one. And then maybe twice a year we can do these shows, and we'll do them online initially, and then as we get more and more people knowing about it, then we would actually have venues or multiple venues and still stream it online. That's kind of what we want to go toward.
Yeah, that would be nice. Well,
we just want to give artists another place to be able to perform. And we say, okay, well, if we interview artists, then that's the whole idea. Is we're presenting everybody we've talked to. So hopefully, at some point you'll be able to participate in that when you're ready.
Yeah, I'll do my best if I'll have time for that. Of course.
Well, I'd love to have you on because we like your music, and this is we
Thank
want to
you.
let everybody know that they should go out to the BandCamp that you see here and,
Yeah.
and actually go and support the artists. We've always tell people who listen and watch us that musicians, you know, just don't stream their song. Go to their site, buy their merch, buy their record.
Please
and-
do that.
and- yeah,
Musicians
'cause, well,
need
that's-
that.
Yeah, we need support, and you know, just to tell the young people out there, I don't want to come down on, but it's like you'll watch a kid playing video games on YouTube and give them a $20 tip, but then you won't buy the album from the person that you listen to. So think about, like, okay, you're giving that YouTuber who's playing a video game $20 tip for talking about a
Yeah.
video game, but you can't give a musician who had to spend a lot of time, probably a lot of resources, and to give you a song you love, and then you only give them like less than a penny. By
I've
streaming.
bought free CDs this COVID period, so it's some merch. I've been never buying merch from my favorite bands because I'm just not into merch for
Yeah,
that
yeah.
reason. But I did.
Well, it's good to support them. How, you know, I like to support by buying the music. I mean, I don't need another T-shirt.
I just like
but
the
if-
art.
Yeah,
of
if I
that.
see a band that has a cool poster, or they have
Yeah.
like a cool image, and then I was like, okay, I like what they're doing, and then maybe I'll get the record that comes with the T-shirt and all this stuff to get
Yeah.
the special edition to make sure that they know that I'm supporting them. But yeah, I think everybody should just make sure you go out to your BandCamp, check it out, and you know, support the artists they love. And you know, if the artist is on Spotify and they got that COVID-19 button, donate to the artist there. You know, if you're on SoundCloud, donate there. Just do whatever you can to help artists, because you know, like it's like kind of literally sometimes we're starving artists. We don't get a lot of support, so it would be cool if you did. We thank you for being on the program. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So we will get this out to you. It's already on these channels. We will get you the links so you have them, and we're going to convert it to audio, so you'll get those within an hour. They'll start to go
Yeah.
to Spotify and Apple.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being on. We'll talk to you
Yeah.
again, I'm sure. When your
Sure.
album comes out, when your album comes out, let us know, and we'll do an album
Yeah.
release show.
Wonderful, wonderful idea. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.